And here he is, presidential candidate Steve Laffey. Steve, congratulations on your announcement and launch.
Hey, great. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you just fine. You've done this before with us a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, from this office.
From that very office. So, how's it going so far?
It's going better than expected. Just got off the phone with Newsweek. You saw me on ABC Good Morning America, Newsmax Live. I mean, every periodical. In fact, they just mentioned is over in Ireland with a big article, and in Canada. So it's really happening. I mean, we are taking root. What the Examiner, Washington Examiner, had a big article, front page above the fold this morning. So there's an adult in the room running for president, and the rest of these people can just argue all day long, like about Social Security doing nothing or cutting or this or that. But people are going to want to hear the real solutions. Like that's what's happening. There's nobody.
Well, let's talk about that, because I was really impressed on your Good Morning America interview. You said it's important we have a businessman, a guy who understands finance. Basically saying a lot of people, to use, maybe I'm using a word you wouldn't use, are being childish by ignoring certain major problems we have as a country. But you, as the adult, you said we can't ignore some of the problems we're facing.
No, we can't. And it's not just a businessman; it's a financial expert. So the people in Rhode Island, they know I taught the top finance course at University of Rhode Island, right? They know I went to Harvard Business School. They know I helped run a financial firm, right? I mean, we turned around financially. The city of Cranston wasn't a structural road bridge fell apart. It was a financial problem. And so we have financial problems. So we just don't need a bunch of lawyers, people who have been in office a long time, or even businessmen who ran up $8 trillion of debt and say, don't touch Social Security. That's not really a businessman. That's a real estate developer. Someone who I'm not an ever Trumper, but someone who wanted those negative interest rates. That's financially immoral is what it is. So it got to this point, where what I talked about in the movie Fixing America is happening, both with China.
We're going to get into all that. And we're going to get into some specific issues, but let me ask you at some higher level.
Sure.
Kind of crowded stage, right? It's going to be a crowded stage. We don't know how much Joe Biden's going to be challenged from the Democrat Party.
Joe Biden won't be the nominee, but go ahead.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to be a crowded GOP primary field. But
first I don't know that to be true. But anyway, we don't know that.
All right. So first of all, let me ask it this.
I just want to make sure you understand. A lot of people talk about a lot of things. I'm the first person to take on Donald Trump in a primary. A lot of people talk. They keep talking, and they may talk all the way to September. So let's not assume there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of this, a lot of that.
All right.
But I'll tell you what.
Let's not assume. All right. So let's stay with I was going to start with Biden first, but let's start. So why not let Donald Trump make America great again? Why not? Why Steve Laffey's Fixing America instead?
What was so great about what happened? I mean, when we Republicans, right, went after Barack Obama for $8 trillion of national debt created in 8 years, why was everybody but me seemingly silent about the $8 trillion in 4 years? What was so great about making America great by shutting down the economy? What was so great about making America great about the PPP program, which every single U.S. Senator, every single Republican U.S. Senator signed off on? That's Rubio, Cotton, right? Conservative guys, right? Supposedly, right? Ted Cruz. And why did President Trump sign off on the PPP program? Even NBC says it's the biggest fraud-driven thing they've ever seen. 70,000 cases of fraud. By the way, what was so great about the inflation that it caused? So when you say make America great, he left office in December of what, 2020? Was it great? Great? What was happening?
So that'll be one of your lines of attack against. He is announced, so he will be one of your.
I have no lines of attack. I have specific solutions, complete solutions for America. You asked me a question about as if someone should believe that. See, what I always do.
Well, it's just a trope. I'm just throwing out his trope to you to see what you thought about it.
Yeah, that's what I think about it.
All right. What do you think about Joe Biden? Why not let him, quote, finish the job?
The job of complete destruction of the American economy? I guess we could. I got to get to another country if that's the case. His speech for the State of the Union was bizarre. I mean, it was some of it was complete lies. So how long will we go? I just want to ask about like President Biden and some of these other people. How long will we go where someone says something like, I've reduced the deficit by like whatever percent, right? When the year before he was president and it was 2.7 trillion, but it went down to 1.5 trillion. Is that reducing the deficit? Like the deficit keeps going up. So that's a complete lie. How about the one where people pay billionaires, the billionaire tax that actually hits people with $100 million or more on unearned gains? I mean, unsold gains in, say, stocks. Like, now he says those people pay, first of all, those aren't billionaires, they're $100 million a year guys, right? So how about the Inflation Reduction Act that has nothing to do with inflation? Money has something to do with inflation. So how much longer will we live in the 1984 world? The book, 1984, George.
Yeah, right.
How are we going? What's going on?
We are living in that world.
He says those people pay 8%. Even the Washington Post fact checks and says that's if you include his new tax thing that doesn't happen. So the average billionaire pays 23% taxes. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. We need a new tax system. I'm just saying, how much longer will we have to be subjected to complete bold-faced lies like transitory inflation from the Fed? Why won't an adult enter the arena like I did and be the adult in the room driving down the Laffey lane that actually has real solutions that some people won't like? Why does it always have to be?
We are going to get into specific issues, but I brought up those other two so you could make the contrast. Joe Biden wants to finish a job. Donald Trump wants to make America great again. There'll probably be other competitors. Is your theme going to be fixing America, and what is your approach?
It's right on my website.
Mean, you kind of said it. What is your fixing America approach that's different from the other two?
We directly confront problems and solve them.
Okay.
That's the Laffey lane, and nobody else is going to drive down it. They're in the talking lane. Again, back to like, we're going to bring pharmaceuticals back to America from 2020. Talk. Lindsey Graham's probably still talking about the 2016 election, right? I mean, you've seen him talk about it in 2020 about it. I mean, this is the talking lane. Then there'll be the attack lane. I'm not in those lanes, right? They just attack. If I get one more thing from the governor of Florida, or I just picked up a giant mailer from Rand Paul, not Ron Paul anymore, but Rand Paul, must be nice to have your father be a well-known guy. I don't know that. My father was a toolmaker. So anyway, or have $300 million to start. I kind of grew up on Shore Avenue, right? So these are big advantages, right? They have nothing to do with fixing the country. They're just name recognition. Right. But now we have the internet, right? So the most qualified person to be the president is me. There's none of these people are qualified to fix these problems. Why? They don't even want to speak about them. So we've crossed the Rubicon, as I predicted in the movie Fixing America that we made in 2011. We're past 20 trillion in what we actually borrow, right? The people from China borrow from us. And so now we can't go back. I said it would happen. It happened. And now the certain disaster is staring us in the face, much like on a macrocosm of what happened in Cranston for people listening in Rhode Island, just as I started getting going. I said it was going to happen like right now. And it did. Bond already went to the low. So wouldn't it be better to have someone who's been right about China, the Fed, Social Security, what to do about balancing the budget, than people who are still catching up to the truth, I suppose, is the best way.
Is Fixing America going to be your official? Are you going to have a campaign theme or name or label or something?
I suppose. I don't know. We can call it Fixing America. We can call it, the adult in the room. We could call it, people call it whatever you want. But
okay.
But the issue is that America since at least, I can think of, like, you go back to Newt Gingrich and President Clinton, doing welfare reform. Okay, that was something. That was like the 1990s, Michael. So is anybody going to grow up and solve some problems? Because they're far worse.
Yeah, we're going to get into Social Security and a couple more general questions, then we'll get into some specific issues. Let's stay on the national trail for now. You mentioned some of the media coverage you've already had that's coming up. That's terrific. But still, admittedly, on a national stage, you're not a household name, right? Right. So you've got a little different approach, but is there a wow policy? Is there a wow moment that will help you break through whatever clutter and whatever other dead wood is or good wood is going to be in front of you on the stage. Basically, how are you going to break through? Is it going to be money? Is it going to be some wild policy? Because you're going to have to gain national recognition, right?
It's going to take time. We're just going to grind away at it. I mean, it happened to Herman Cain, right? So, and there's this thing called the internet, so that, didn't exist a long time ago. So it's going to be a long grind. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if I took the last 8.5 years out of public life, except for some shows with you and whatever, because of my daughter's cancer, so what? I mean, what was I supposed to do? Just keep doing what people do, and then, no, you have a great family. Your parents do what has to be done. I do what has to be done. So be it. I'm heading to New Hampshire, and if you've ever seen me campaign, which you have, and 3 months from now, would somebody know who I was in New Hampshire? I think so.
Well, Steve, I don't know if you know, I've said this privately. I don't know if I've ever said it on air, but when you ran for mayor and became my mayor in Cranston, what was it, 15, 20 years ago?
21 years.
What year did you first get in? Was it
2002?
Yeah, it was over 20 years ago. And I came to some of your campaign events and whatnot. You're the guy that got me interested in politics. And then many years later, that's how I got involved in the movement. So it's because of you. I just want you to know that. Anyway. All right. So New Hampshire, you mentioned that. Obviously, if you can get on the board in New Hampshire, that sets the stage for upcoming primaries. Rhode Island will hold a primary. What would you say to GOP voters? As if they're thinking right now about next year's GOP primary. Give a message specifically to voters from your home state of Rhode Island, if and when that you're on that primary ballot here.
Well, the people around, you've seen what I can do. The city of Cranston was the lowest bond rating in the United States of America. It was 37 days from defaulting on its debt when I took office. The previous all-Democratic city council and Democratic mayor had decided to take all the money out of the pension fund, right? And that's what caused the final collapse. So we took radical action. Do you remember me threatening not to pay the bonds? People remember this. I had to go meet with the Speaker of the House, who I played basketball against. He was from Warwick, and I told them what we would do. They had to do something at the state level. If they wouldn't, I was just going to walk away. It wasn't my problem. That was Mayor Larry's problem. So they did. They passed the Qualified Bond Act. And how rapid of a change was there in Cranston? I mean, the city was fixed in 4 or 5 months. I mean, we didn't.
Yeah, immediate.
People really didn't feel it. But remember my opponent saying things like, "Oh, he's too slow," and he works too fast. I don't like the way he does things. America is that in the microcosm. So a lot of people from Rhode Island are texting, going to the website. I'm coming to New Hampshire. So we're going to have, I wouldn't say it's like the Blues Brothers movie, putting the band back together with, dark glasses on, but we're going to have, I think, a lot of people helping out. And by the way, the people in New Hampshire, listen, the pizza won't be as good, but New Hampshire's a state like, I went to Bowdoin College in Maine. I went to Harvard Business School.
And you told me offline, you do have Rhode Islanders helping you volunteering for your New Hampshire trip and campaign, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Many people I got in contact with and they want to help, which is good.
All right. And if anybody wants to help, SteveLaffey.com.
SteveLaffey.com. Just go to the contact. We may not respond till we need you in a sense. I've got some guy email me who wants to know when I'm going to North Phoenix just a second ago. Arizona, I had to say, not right away. Politely, right? But this is, listen, no one's saying this is going to be easy. I'm not saying, well, I'm the front runner, but ask the governors of Florida, Jeb Bush and Scott Walker, what it was like to be the massive front runner before they announced. Not too good. But by the way,
sorry, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one grizzly old reporter told me this story, and Catherine Gregg corrected me what it was really about. But it's November or December of 75, and there's a giant Democratic debate in Vermont, and this young reporter can't get a word in edgewise. Everybody's crowded around the leaders, so he decides to interview the one guy who can't win when no one's talking to him, and he goes up and he interviews Jimmy Carter. He was right for the times. In Cranston, I was right for the times. And now again, what I learned about politics, it doesn't matter how great job you do. And if you're not right for the times, people don't want to hear it. But why would you think that there's 70% of people in the Gallup poll saying we're in the wrong direction when unemployment is at 3.5%? They know. They know it's right here in front of us. It's like the cliff is here and we're going off. During this campaign, we're going off the cliff. It's not Reagan. We have one generation away from losing the country. We're now down to 2 years. And it's happening right in front of my face. So I have to run.
All right. Now, I'm sure you look, I'm going to set myself up. You can whack me over the head with this one. All right.
Okay.
I'm sure you're not going to like it, but I have affectionately referred to you as Mayor Steve. I mean, if Mayor Pete Buttigieg can use that name he was an unknown mayor from a small town who rose.
And a terrible mayor.
Yeah, a terrible mayor. And he didn't even have the business background you have. But why can't Mayor Steve duplicate on the Republican side what Mayor Pete did on the Democrat side?
Why not? I mean, I'd have nothing in comparison except we're the mayors of a medium-sized city. He did a terrible job. People came out against him within the city. You can't believe what they were doing. But he pre-programmed his life. And he got to be the Secretary of Transportation. And as he announced being secretary to be nominated, he announced something like, I really liked playing with train sets as a kid. And then took 3 months out of work for, anyway, let's not. So it seems ludicrous, but look I'm willing to help in any way possible. And I'm just going to change the very nature of the debate, Michael. Michael, I'm going to get into these debates. I mean, listen, Newsweek didn't call just because they didn't think I was a serious person, right? ABC didn't have me on because I just was going to tell jokes. It's a very serious interview. Go watch it at ABC if you haven't watched it. Watch me on Newsmax. So when someone says in a debate, I just let people know what's coming. Here, they can watch this right now. Mayor Laffey, you're abortion. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pro-life. But let me turn to this guy over here. My plan to fix Social Security saves $61 trillion. You say don't touch it. The younger peep generation, you've totally hosed. When they go to see a financial planner at the age of under 40, they zero out Social Security as if they're never going to get it, yet they're paying it effectively 12% because they pay the employer part too. And you're just going to say nothing to those people? You don't have a complete plan to fix it? What are you doing on the stage?
All right. Since you brought it up, tell us more about what is the Social Security problem and what generally is the Laffey approach to fix it.
The basic Social Security problem is that it's a Ponzi scheme because the money's not kept there for you to retire. It relies on them collecting more money from new entrants. And the big problem with that is there aren't many more new entrants. We used to have 15 workers for every retiree. We now have 3. And there's your graph. So when Greenspan said in 83 he fixed it, he lied, right? So this is what has to happen. We have to have a new plan. So here's the plan. I'll just be very rough. You can go to stevelaffey.com. After you hit the donate button and donate, go to Steve Laffey, hit the issue button and go to Social Security. And you'll see that people who have already retired will get whatever they got coming to them from the old plan. People who are 20, joining in, let's say roughly 20, joining a new plan, it's a brand new plan. And we buy for them a whole worldwide basket with one computer, no Charles Schwab, not to make fun of Charles Schwab, no JP Morgan, nobody, you can't take the money out, but you own it. Okay. And you go from 20 to 62 years old, roughly, let's say. And then we stop buying annuities or tips, treasury investments. And then when you're 70, 72, that's your money. All the people retiring who lived that far.
So they're kind of like a government managed, not owned 401k plan, kind of like?
I wouldn't call it. No, I would not call it that because in 401k plans, people who are young just keep taking the money out when they switch jobs. This is Social Security.
All right.
But instead of putting it in nothing, by the way, much like the Cranston pension fund, it had $18 million and then went to 9, but they invested it for like the 20 previous years in nothing. What if they had put it in stocks? I wouldn't even had a problem. So
basically, you're talking about grandfathering out at some age the existing for older folks.
Anybody who's already got it
will be under the current system, but then at some age, everybody new into the system will go into a new system that will eventually totally replace the old system.
And the people who are like 40 get what they were going to get at zeroing. They go to zero in that old plan. But if it says you're going to get a check for $1,500 at the age of 62, they get that. But then
why does it save money? Why does it save money?
Well, look at the end of the day, that money's invested. And the actual $61 trillion liability goes to zero. Why would it go to zero? Everybody in the old system dies. I'm not making fun of this. They pass away. Everybody in the new system has an account they get every year. And it says you have X in it. And by the way,
who invests it and where?
It's pretty easy. You just have this one giant ETF. You could invest it in just symbol VT if you wanted to. That's just the worldwide basket of stocks. Then you could invest it in a worldwide basket of real estate. They have ETFs for this, Mike. I mean,
who chooses? Each account holder makes
no. They don't. No. It's not going to Charles Schwab. We're not having people take it out. We know what the world investment market.
No, but what I'm saying is, who makes those decisions on how to invest it? Government people that you would appoint or something like that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, listen,
just to be clear.
Listen, I just want to be very clear about one thing. Nobody's going beyond that. For someone to suggest something beyond that, it ain't ever happening. I don't suggest things that never happen. And Social Security, blah, blah, blah. Not happening. But the bottom line is, actuarially, liabilities and assets start to equal each other, and we don't have this problem. And nobody ever goes broke. And nobody ever gets a check cut. I mean, cut, which is about to happen to all retirees. And if it doesn't happen, the only reason it doesn't happen is they change retirees' inflation beneficiary, right? It won't be adjusted to inflation and we'll still have inflation. That's the only other way out. It's the way of Rome. It's the way of countries that are about to fail. They have inflation and they don't pay people more.
So we know what a third rail it is. We know how it will be used as political ammo. I mean, it could be the greatest idea in the world, but they're going to want to use it to their political advantage and shoot it down and shoot you down and anybody else who wants to, quote, touch Social Security. So here's my question. A, how do you get around that? And B, respond to it's my contention. The only way you can reform Social Security and Medicare is through some kind of bipartisan commission that agrees not to attack each other. What do you say to all that?
Well, listen, the alternative is you get your check cut by a third. So, and two, I don't leave people that option. By the way, I'm not an inventor. You're not speaking to Alexander Graham Bell, right? I'm just a guy who is a financial expert who finds best practices in everything he does and adopts them. I put the right people in the right place at the right time. I have a gift for this. I mean, did I have a scandal in Cranston that someone didn't tell me about yet? Was there something at Morgan Keegan where I worked that there was some gigantic? There's nothing. In fact, look at Cranston when people hate me. What do they say? They don't. Can you find the article where he was wrong? Laffey was wrong. We should have done something else. There's no article. The worst enemy only says he's only out for himself. It's just the way people say things, right? I mean, out for myself.
Or he ticked off the unions or something.
Right. I mean, I go from being the president CEO of Morgan Keegan to an $80,000 job at Cranston. I'm out for myself. Okay. I mean, by the way, it's totally fine. It means that they don't have an argument. So the same thing is this. The world-renowned expert on Social Security reform is one guy, Larry Kotlikoff, the senior economic professor at Boston University. You should have him on your show. I took his plan, not my plan. I don't need to take my plan. I'm not a Social Security expert. I took his plan. It's been vetted by hundreds of economists. Right? So what's the hole they're going to drive through that? When he testifies in front of Congress as the world-renowned expert on Social Security, go to Larry Kotlikoff's Social Security and you'll find more stuff than about me about what I do.
All right.
There's a whole website about when to take it. So when they start shooting holes in it and I bring Larry up and say, Larry, but the other thing is I say to them, because right now they love it this way, right? Here's what they love. The page A4 of the Wall Street Journal today. Democrats say Republicans are going to cut Social Security because Senator Rick Scott, not Tim Scott, Senator Rick Scott is a very smart man, but has very bad politics on this, says he wants to sunset every government program every 5 years and bring it back. Well, obviously that includes Social Security. That gives the Democrats a chance to whack them. I don't know why.
Joe Biden took a swing at that the other night.
And politically, it's a winner for Joe Biden, unfortunately for Republicans. Just the way it is. On the flip side, he's now got Donald Trump saying we won't touch it. And now Speaker McCarthy, we won't touch it, and trying to defend what Rick Scott has come up with by saying not only that, we won't touch Medicare, Medicaid. But as the CBO accurately points out, then you cut 86% out of the rest of the budget, and 10 years later, you might balance the budget. So these people play a game of everybody must be stupid because I'm saying really stupid things. That's their game.
All
But that game doesn't
right.
solve my problem. But listen, this is my campaign. It's really about your children, Michael.
Well,
The
that's the point I want you to make. What does this mean? How does this translate to families, to future generations? Not only the Social Security issue, we're looking at an economic potential downturn. I don't know if you're still thinking there's going to be a recession coming later this year. We're still suffering from high inflation. Energy costs are up. Energy security is down. We don't even know if we have enough energy for our grid. So what your thoughts on the economy and your general approach towards how you're going to help current and future generations?
Well, this is what helps. Everybody who I meet who's a college student, I am going to be asking at Dartmouth College, let's say, or if I'll come down to URI, by the way, I taught there. I'll come down and talk to the kids there, or Rhode Island College. I just did an interview with Rhode Island College. They should call their parents and grandparents from when I'm speaking. Like, pull out your cell phone when I'm done. And I want everybody to call their grandfather and say, why did you hose me? Why did you destroy me? I'm not joking. Like, why? You're the worst generation, Dad. Everybody 16 older is part of the worst generation because we destroyed the future of America. And that's why 70% of the country thinks we're in the wrong direction when unemployment was 3.5%. Think of those two statistics.
Right.
When has it happened before? Never. And that's because people know we're right about to fall off the cliff like Cranston was in a microcosm. But by the way, is the argument I shouldn't do this? Is the argument that, like, what do you listen? This is tough.
Well, the argument is, can you survive the arrows that the other side will shoot at you over this?
I am the original person who took on the swamp in 2006. I didn't run against, let's be very specific. I didn't run against Lincoln Chafee. Me against Lynn Chafee in a Republican primary, I win 70.
Just so anyone doesn't know, Rhode Island senatorial primary in the Republican side, right?
Yeah, I mean, I beat him 75-25 even in Rhode Island in a Republican primary. No one would doubt that. I ran against the National Republican Party in the most wicked, to use Rhode Island terminology, race ever seen. Why did I get a big book deal out of Penguin Books, not out of Joe Blow? The biggest book publisher in the world wanted me to write a book about this because it never.
Well, your own party nationally screwed you, basically, right?
So do you think I haven't been through the ringer? Every race I have in Rhode Island. The mayor's race. How about the re-election against the husband of a crossing guard? That's the front page above the fold. How many stories about that? That was the biggest race in Rhode Island, in a primary in the history of Rhode Island. My primary in Rhode Island turned out twice as many people as ever voted before or after in any Republican primary.
Them were crossover Democrats, right?
So if do I not know what's coming? What am I just? Did I fall off a tomato truck? I mean. Mike, you're talking to Steve Laffey, Harvard Business School grad. I take on all these things.
I just want you to explain to our audience. You know, I know. Okay.
You know how I grew up. It wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't. All right, Steve. I think one of your wild policies, we were talking about that earlier, is China. You've been saying it for a long time. We should stop trade with China.
Yeah.
Explain. You should have done it 10 years ago. Go ahead.
I would have done it. I started talking about this publicly in 2005. In 2005, Pat Toomey, the retiring senator, ran the Club for Growth. They interviewed me. I filled out a form. You have to be for free trade. And go get the document. I got to have it somewhere. I must have kept it. But above the free trade thing, it says no trading with China. They still endorsed me. And I said what I knew to be true then, and everybody else disagreed. I said China would never become a democracy by trading with them. Why did I say that? I go by evidence. It's never happened. Did Pol Pot become a Stalin? I mean, what's the example of like trading with someone and they say, oh, that's great. We'll just be a democracy. I told everybody that they would build up their military with the dollars we sent them and they would cut our supply chains one day. I said it in 2005. Who was right and who was wrong? Was the Wall Street Journal wrong? Wrong. Was my opponent wrong? Wrong. Marco Rubio 3 weeks ago, go look it up. I didn't bring it with me, but he literally says about one of the China disaster things that are happening, balloons, this and that. Wasn't that? It was before that. He says something like, that's a warning shot across our bow. I'm like, Marco Rubio, you seem like a nice guy. But here's
What, the
what's
balloon? The balloon?
No, it was before the balloon.
Okay.
Someone could say this every day, stealing secrets, hassling people in America, balloons that fly overhead, hypersonic missiles, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I told you all this is going to happen. In fact, if you watch it, go to Amazon and you can watch the movie. It's like a prophecy, a secular prophecy.
We fueled the growth of our major enemy.
By the way, did Donald Trump say that? What did he do about it? I said he was going to. And by the way, not on Apple Computer. How about the last trade agreement? So make America great. The last trade agreement was what? We sell them some wheat, which they never buy, by the way. They bought 30% of it. And they stopped doing all these bad things. I said then it's like, what are we, Ecuador? Like, what are you, a third world country? We're selling someone wheat now? And so I want to be very specific about this. We're not going to stop trading with China tomorrow morning. But we haven't even brought the pharmaceutical industry back. Like 65% of critical drugs are not made in North America.
Well, that's my question. China has dominated, like you said, put our own supply chain. We fueled that growth for them. It's whether it's computer chips or pharmaceuticals and so many other manufactured products, even steel to some extent. If they cut us off, we're in big trouble. How do we reverse all that?
On a debate stage, first of all, who's going to say I said this in 2005? There's not a certain. I don't know nobody who's showing up to even come close to saying this, right? Watch Donald Trump on David Letterman, not to criticize the former president, but I'm wearing a Hickey Freeman suit made in America. This is from Bow Ties in Vermont. Gitman Brothers made the shirt. The belt is made by Filson. What else do you need to know? I drive 3 American-made cars. The tires, when I go to replace them, I look for ones with like a B6 on them. I don't always get what I want, so I go to Nova Scotia, I think the last pair of tires. But they're not made in China. Now, some things we can't avoid, this computer or whatever, we can't avoid some of this stuff. But wouldn't you rather have a president who actually lived like this? And then, like John F. Kennedy did for physical fitness, was out there saying this as president? Wouldn't people start doing it? Of course they would.
So more than the consumer, what do we do from a policy point of view to bring back our supply chain?
From a policy standpoint, we raise tariffs until people bring it home. We tell companies, listen, and we tell people, listen, starting at a certain date, if you're in this country and you get arrested, you think we're coming to help? What are you doing there? You know, by the way, if you want to sell cars, build cars there and sell cars there, that's a different story. But we need this stuff made, and it can't, I guess, and listen, I'm trying to be totally honest with you. It won't all be made in America. A lot will. Canada's a pretty good friend of ours. I mean, by the way, Puerto Rico has a lot. That's where a lot of pharmaceuticals were made. We can bring some back to there. Those people are hurting. But I mean, generally speaking, just so people know, when you talk about it in economic terms, the hollowing out of the manufacturing base of America, starting with Japan's rise, and then they had the Plaza Accords, which they didn't need to do anything more because that's when Toyota started opening up in America, in Tennessee. And by the way, for all Rhode Islanders, in right-to-work states, just so everybody knows. I've been talking about this for years. It's not an issue right now, but the dumbest thing Rhode Island ever did should have been a right-to-work state because no one around it was.
Right.
Then you would have
think of the competitive advantage we would have had, right?
Or in Tennessee or whatever, right? So
yeah, that's right.
By the way, Michigan became a right-to-work state. They may go backwards now, but they became a right-to-work state. So, but this stuff will happen. You just have to increase the pain level. Because as Dylan Ratigan says in the movie, and I've said publicly in my movie, you know, Walmart, Caterpillar, they became Chinese companies. And China couldn't lobby directly to the United States. We want our job. We want to take your jobs. But Walmart said, we like it this way. And who did they give money to? The candidates who kept saying, you know, we're doing this with communist China because one day there'll be a democracy in front of it. Here's the thing. They all, just so people know this, everybody knows that's a lie. They knew it then. I'm the only one willing to say it in 2005. It wasn't Rand Paul. I mean, seriously, it wasn't any of these. It wasn't Ron Paul. It wasn't people stuck on free trade with countries that are free and have, within some reason, and have relatively similar GDP per capita. Like, we should have a free trade agreement with the UK. What's so hard about that? It'll be better for America.
We got about 9 minutes to cover 3 or 4 more topics, if you don't mind. Let's stay overseas. Ukraine. Should we have an open checkbook to support their war against Russia?
No, not an open checkbook, but here's the deal. I wrote this when I was 20 years old. America has the right, but not the duty, to interfere when people's freedom is being taken away. In this particular case, it's a geopolitical thing. People have to understand that since the time of before Ivan the Terrible, okay, back in the 1500s, and Russia has always wanted that land. It's terrible geography, but they've always had people coming their way to take Moscow and die in the winter. They need that land. That's what they think. That's how they think. They thought. But
is it our business?
Yes. Our business to make sure they're not close to one of our NATO people and get stronger again. A terrible mistake was made after the Soviet Union fell. We signed the Budapest Accords, which I guess if you don't want to obey what we said we would, I guess we wouldn't help people. Like we do what China does with trade agreements. We just don't do it. But we agreed, and the UK agreed, that if they gave up their nuclear weapons, which they did, which they shouldn't have. I would have disagreed with that. We should have taken over the nuclear weapons and pointed them, as part of NATO that day. But we didn't do it. We just forgot about it. But they always want that land back. So when they were attacked, we help. Now, we help way more than we should compared to other countries. We totally get that. It would seem to me that, by the way, this is a good thing Donald Trump started, but again, never finished. Getting NATO countries to pay more of their GDP per capita. He really did, by the way. He taunted them in the way. I would simply say, you guys are on war footing. When we were on war footing, we go back to the 40s or whatever, we were 10% of GDP per capita, right? You guys need to go to 10%. Or otherwise, at some point, we can't help you, Germany.
Right.
I would continue that. Yeah. I would continue that, but right now, it's a geopolitical thing.
Okay.
It's about, by the way, Ukraine is the second largest landmass country in Europe. Russia being
big farm and wheat producer. Yeah, big. Yeah.
And here's the other thing I want everybody to know. That area of Eastern Europe is going to be the next growth phase of the world, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, the former Soviet blocs and all that. Yeah.
They're intelligent. They got good school systems, many ways better than ours. They got cheap labor. Anyway, go ahead.
Let's move on. Immigration. What do we do with the southern border? Do we rebuild the wall? What do we do?
I mean, obviously, the wall was never finished, blah, blah, blah. You could have a wall, but you needed to take a much more stark position against Mexico. So you're talking to someone who's been across the border into Altar. You can go read about it. These people go to the edge of the border and look over. I went through to Altar, Mexico, in a very dangerous situation with Dr. Robin Hoover. Google Steve Laffey, Dr. Robin Hoover, and watch me do this back in the day when I was mayor. So the real. I mean, by the way, I'm not for illegal immigration. Everybody knows this. I'm very strong against it. But the real problem is Mexico. They allow people to come across their country. They can't stay in Mexico. I watched Mexican policemen hand, to people saying, "Oh, here's how you go across the border." Also, we have to take much more of a moral stance. Young ladies are raped at the border every night. That ain't happening if I'm president. Let me tell you something. Whatever it takes, far more than you've seen, whatever it takes, that's not happening if I'm president.
Our Senate released a report last week, a 50-page report tearing apart woke social studies standards put out by the Rhode Island Department of Education. As it turns out, the federal Department of Education provided hundreds of millions of dollars to our state, billions of dollars across the country to other states to promote the social equity, what we would call woke agenda.
Right.
Permeating down. So as president, what would you do about that kind of funding coming out of the Department of Education at the federal level?
Look at my website, stevelaffey.com. There are some things that cannot be fixed. Our public schools cannot be fixed. We have to have a 10-year plan of getting every student out. I'm just telling you.
That's a wow issue.
By the way, I'm saying that like I said in 2005, that China would be a giant problem, and you're all wrong. We can't fix the public schools. There are some people who still believe they just watched a rerun of Little House on the Prairie, and that's what a school looks like. It ain't. Some people think they just missed the last 15 years of PTA meetings where they could be involved. There aren't any. So Republican governors, by the way, Democrat governors worse, tend to say, stop the wokeness, but we'll give you more money. So as a businessman, by the way, I guess Trump is not, I mean, this is a real easy decision. Denver, Providence, whatever, $25,000 a student. Steve Laffey is the only candidate who has 6 children, the only candidate who homeschooled personally 3 kids, right? And the results are in, who sent them to public schools, private school, Catholic school, LaSalle, where Peter went, right? Montessori schools. I'm the only person who dealt directly with antagonistic, to say nicely, school system, right? So I taught at URI. I know the answer. The answer is you got to get them all out.
Would you abolish the federal Department of
We
Education?
can educate. By the way, why does the federal government not have an Algebra 1 course taught by, say, me, or someone who's better teaching than me? Why is it not free on the website so every kid could learn free? So here's the thing just to understand. $21,000 or the Laffey way at $4,500, a check for $7,000 to go somewhere else, or free. It's called the internet. Think about it. One teacher could teach Algebra 1 for the country.
Yeah, I think the whole business model does need to be changed. Yeah, you can have the best teachers teach the whole country, really.
But what happens? What happens instead? Name the last 5 the department heads of federal education, secretary of education. You can't. They come into the Democrats, they put in bad rules. They come into the Republicans, they force school choice, and nothing happens.
All right, so segue that very quick. We got 3 minutes with 3 more questions, 1 minute each. Talk about education when it comes to the issue of parental rights. We know the school systems are trying to become
I'll make
the
it really easy. I just suggested that every decision's made by a parent, not by a public school.
That'll do it. All right.
Okay.
What is the federal role in protecting the Second Amendment? You got Joe Biden calling for continued bans and infringements. Talk about Second Amendment rights in the federal
Supreme Court
world.
has ruled on it. I am a gun owner. It's very easy. Just read it and read it over again. I mean, the Second Amendment, to be very clear, was not set up for anything other than to defend people walking around against the tyranny of the government. Look at so let's ask one quick question.
That's a key point. Everyone says against each other, but it's against tyranny of the government, really.
Take a look at Hong Kong. If everybody had a gun, you think they'd be doing that? The only thing that keeps China from coming in here someday, if we keep going the direction, I'm not saying today, is that there's 350 million guns. I hate to say it this way. If everybody
it's
had
true.
If
it's
everybody
true.
had, by the way, if everybody had some national service, not the military necessarily, but they had national service and learned how to handle an AR-15 like I have, or a Glock like I have, they wouldn't be scared of it anymore. Most people, when they have no idea what they're talking about. They think the gun picks itself up and runs out the room, right? So this is a very important issue. But remember, in Australia, they took away a lot of the guns. They're at a lot of risk. I mean,
all right.
Go ahead.
Last issue
that got taken over by the government.
Yep.
Name the country.
Last issue before we do a wrap-up question. Joe Biden last night continued his assault on American corporations, saying they're not paying enough, attacked the energy companies.
Yeah.
It's as if corporations are the bad guys. I mean, isn't the free market paying employees, hiring people, distributing stock and dividends to shareholders, isn't that the best kind of distribution of wealth? And why is Joe Biden, and what do you say to his attacks on corporate America?
Oh, the general attack on corporations about paying enough. That's why I went to a 999 plan, which we don't have time to discuss. Okay. But here's what I really want to say. The part where large corporations at American Airlines or whatever, who are cyclical companies, buy back a lot of stock, take on a lot of debt, and then come to the American government in 2008 and 2020 for money, needs to stop.
Yeah, no handout.
No handout. So I would not, by the way, and before 1992, I may have the year wrong, it was basically illegal to buy back stock. I agree with that. If I agree with only one thing with Joe Biden, buying back stock above book value can only mean one thing. Book value goes down. Debt goes up. And the risk goes up. Look at U.S. Steel. They
Aren't
buy
they
back.
paying off shareholders when they buy the stock? Isn't that a good thing?
No, it hasn't been a good thing. Take a look at the results of go look at the guy who ran American Airlines. Look at what U.S. Steel did. These super cyclical companies think they're going to get bailed out, and they do short-term stuff for the CEOs. Now, listen, that's just one part. Dividends, fine, whatever. I mean, yes, capitalism is good. Large, giant corporations lobbying too much about China, for example, into the U.S. government has been a disaster, along with the large banks, which need to be broken up. They do. That's a whole other discussion. We'll have it later.
Let's do it. All right. Last question for today, Steve. For anyone watching, whether they're a Rhode Islander, whether they're someone somewhere else in the country, like we said earlier, you're not a household name yet. There are some big potential names already announced, maybe about to announce. You're a return on investment guy. Does Steve Laffey really have enough of a chance to win where people should invest in you? Yes. Tell them why they should.
The answer is yes, because even if I only move the needle and change the whole nature of the debate in New Hampshire, you as an investor will win. Somebody may very well say, I don't want to take this Laffey because he's not attacking me and I don't have an answer. You watch someone like a major figure like what happened in Rhode Island may turn and say, you know what? Steve's right. We're going to have to fix Social Security. I like his plan. You may find, by the way, these are very easy things. They're good programs. The Fed only doing inflation. Why wouldn't someone say, he's right? By the way,
so New Hampshire is your key to getting on the board.
Yes.
Okay.
I learned from a man named Herman Cain. Became a friend of mine, and he taught me how to do it. I wish he was alive. He was a great man. He should have been president.
Well, like I said, when I opened the show, it's not every day you get a chance to interview a candidate for president of the United States. I've interviewed you as my friend many times. It's an honor to have you on my show as a presidential candidate, and I hope you'll come back.
As you know, I love Rhode Island. I love everybody. I love everything. I mean, I wish I will be back, by the way. I'm not that far away from Manchester, so you'll see me and you'll personally see me. But people in Rhode Island will see me, not as often as the people in New Hampshire, that's for sure. But listen, a lot of people are taking this very seriously. Go read the Daily Mail. Is Steve Laffey the breakout candidate? It's a long article. It's read by millions in different languages. It's happening now.
Yeah, and I meant to bring that article up, and here it is. That UK Daily Mail had a huge story on you. Newsmax, you mentioned. I'm sure if people just Google you, they'll find all the stories.
Steve and Laffey. Go to SteveLaffey.com and go to Twitter. Go to Twitter and see it. It's happening. It's happening. I didn't think it would happen this fast. It's happening now. Like this is happening. So,
well, if it, like you said, if for no other reason than to move the needle,
right?
I wish you good luck because look. I'll say this. When you were on my show as co-host of In the Dugout on Mondays, I can't think of one thing you prognosticated on where I kind of said, oh, that's kind of crazy sounding, but they came true.
That's right.
Right. They came true. So I hope other people will realize that. Like you said, I hope you can at least move the needle, hopefully even more for you. You've been very generous with your time today. Mayor Steve Laffey, thank you for being with us.
God bless you. God bless your family. I hope everybody's well. Love you. Say hi to everybody. And I'll be back in Rhode Island soon.
God bless you as well, Steve Laffey. All right, folks, and thank you for tuning in to this extra innings episode of In the Dugout. Mike Stenhouse out. We'll see you next week, next game.